Welcome to the Delighted Customers Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Slayton, and I'm so glad you're here. This podcast is all about empowering leaders to achieve sustainable growth by consistently delighting your customers. We give you practical tips, proven frameworks, and share ways to help you delight your customers. Hi, I want to welcome you to this episode of the Delighted Customers Podcast. We're going to take a global view of the customer experience and hear from a CX expert in one of the most successful brands, Hewlett-Packard. She shares a very unique perspective. For example, how HP designs different experiences based on cultural differences in different countries, getting at what she calls the linchpin that unlocks a great experience, and how digital transformation is being done wrong in so many places and how it really should be implemented. Well, I am so excited for my guest, Jaya Sudarshan. She is going to be fascinating, interesting. She's coming to us all the way from India. And Jaya has been in the Hewlett-Packard family for 18 years. She came up on the back end. She was a business analyst and did all sorts of analytics for them. And in particular, she got involved in data, which led her to data analytics connected to the customer experience, and how her part of the organization, her team, can help best meet customer needs by understanding the data and doing the analytics. And she evolved in her career. We're going to talk more about that. But first, Jaya, welcome to the Delighted Customers Podcast.
Thank you, Mark. And it's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, Jaya, I mentioned the background, data, analytics. Really, you're probably one of those wicked smart people that I admire so much. How did you evolve into the world of CX?
Right. Like you summarized, right? So I did start my career right at the back end. Did a lot of analytics and studying of data in terms of how do we go out and use data to help us create those CX strategies, right, and serve our customers better. While I was doing that, I had the opportunity to actually go help action on some of the data or insights. Is a better word there. How do we action on those insights? And I got the opportunity. I really seized it. And man, I felt like I finally reached a place where I felt like I belonged because, I had the opportunity to meet with some of our customers, partners, and every day brought a new challenge. And what excited me a lot was I was like the voice of the customer within the organization, right? And I could actually see the impact some of the actions that I was doing was bringing on the customers and partners. And that kind of really cemented. I felt very happy about what I was doing, and it just felt like this is coming very naturally to me. And at that time, we were also, as a team, involved of just getting to learn a little bit more about the CX profession. That's when we became part of the CXPA family. Also had the opportunity to do my CCXP certification, and then there was no looking back. And that's kind of like what drew me to the profession, and what kept me in the profession is that no 2 days are the same, no two customers are the same. So there is so much to learn. There is so much to go out there and plan and help our customers. And I think somewhere I've realized that what a true enabler or a differentiator CX can be in helping us achieve those business outcomes that we want to achieve. So very happy, not look back, and just very happy where my career is heading in as a CX professional.
Which thanks for sharing that. I mean, people, you mentioned the word belonging. I think that's a common word that you hear, is that people, I don't know, they don't really plan for it, but when they find it, it's a sense of belonging.
Yep.
I wanted to give our listeners some frame of reference. HP is one of the most storied brands in the United States and in the world. And I worked for 13 years before I got involved in consulting and banking in the office products industry for a company now that's called Office Max. I guess, Office Max, Office Depot. And I mentioned that only that HP was one of our partners that was one of the most admired, respected, and considered one of the top brands in all the different variety of brands that a business can use to operate. But yet sold really got, I think I remember it being prevalent in the printer cartridge, the toner cartridge, world. We did a lot of that. But then got involved in hardware and software. Which area of HP do you work? What area do you tend to focus in?
Okay, the fun thing is being, like you said, with a company the size of HP, right? You have the opportunity in your career to learn and grow and work in different, departments, doing different things. I've done things from things like financial budget management to, like I said, analytics, all that, right? But right now, I am part of the customer support team, and I am the customer experience manager. So for Greater Asia and India, so I drive programs and initiatives which are focused on how do we intentionally design, build experiences for our customers, and also how do we drive the customer, what we call obsession culture or CX culture across the organization. So that is where I sit now.
So that then would cover a multitude of different HP products and services?
That is correct.
Okay. And tell me about what's going on for HP in India. Does it have a strong presence? Where does it, give our audience a sense of what HP in India is like.
HP, as you know, is a global company. They've been in India for a very long time now. We are present in both the PC and the printer market, and we are doing well. We are focusing on both the consumer as well as the commercial side. So, like with all the other, at least in the PC side, we saw what we call the boom, or the numbers going up with everybody with COVID and everybody having going from one PC for one home to probably one PC per person within the home, right? Wow. So obviously there has been the market has boomed, especially for India, because we still don't think we're still a very upcoming economy, right? There are still people who are probably getting that connection or connectivity to like a internet for the first time, right? And people who are still exploring handheld devices and other devices for the first time. So as a market, India is growing as well. And as a company, I think HP is doing reasonably well within the market. So that's kind of like where we are. And also, though we are a global company, I think one thing about HP is that we do look at things with a local lens. So in terms of whether it be products or services or whatever it is that we design for, not just for India, but for the other regions and countries as well, we always try keep in mind what are, for example, the requirements of that particular country, and how are we going to cater to those requirements or the customers there, right? For example, in India, we sweat quite a lot, right? So the way we handle our laptops or the dust that you plan for, right? Whether it's cores or it's very, very soft dust here in India, right? And even the electricity and how our appliances work with that kind of differences in the electricity and small habits, like we say, how do we wrap a cord? Everything is so different in different places, and as a company, that's something that we keep in mind, whether it be products or it's services, whatever is it that we design and think through, we ensure that we have that local lens as well.
So I want to double click on something you said, that what you just walked through, we could unpack for days, but I just want to double click on that because many people listening might not think of HP products and the design of the products. Two things. One gem that I just took away from was that the company is listening well enough to design a product in a country or part of the world that's different because the needs are different. Physically, they're different. There's dust, there's electricity things, there's a way people pack up their machine that impacts the cord that ultimately will end up with a complaint, which is very costly and affects profitability. So they're listening, and you think about so talk about the cord for a minute, because I think you had shared this in a meeting that you and I were at previously, and this is a great illustration of how customer experience isn't customer service or a contact center. A lot of people equate it with customer service, but actually experience design has to do with the way the products are designed. And can you share a little bit about that story?
Absolutely. And that's right, Mark, because right from you conceptualizing the design, like all the way to support, I mean, I think we'll have to keep the customers at the center of everything we do, right? And this is more like, the design thinking. And this is something that a colleague shared with me because he was actually on the project. So like I said, right, the way we wrap the cord around caused a friction where the connection to the adapter was at some point breaking, right? And it was happening more for this particular market. And in order to understand that, when they kind of did, like an RCA or an analysis, what they realized was what is different is the way people were used to doing things, right? In India, we just go, I don't know, people might connect to this, right? And you just go and wrap it around something, right? It's like wrapping a thread around something that's like a frame. So, and that was causing the issue. So, and that was something that was considered in the design factor in order to ensure that you make it probably a little more sturdy. Or how do we work around? It's not easy to change people's habits. That's just the way they're used to doing it, right? So how do you then work around the design to make it even more sturdier so that they don't have to run into this issue? And therefore, downstream, like you said, we save on the cost, right? In terms of whether it be replacement or fixing it or whatever it is, right? So that's just a small example that they share, right? So in terms of what is the kind of attention that we give to the environment in which a product would be used, which is also a huge consideration in how our customers experience our products while they're using it. Yeah.
So what a great point is experience design. One of the basics elements of human-centered design is actually kind of walking in the shoes of the customer, right?
Absolutely. And as a practice, one of the things that we as a team agree upon is when we design something for the customer, even if it's like a service, right, or a service journey, we try to walk that journey ourselves in the customer's shoe and try to understand, if I was a customer, would I like what I've put together? And I think that's a great testing point for us, right? So if I don't like it, why would my customer like it, right? So I think that's something as a team that we agree it's something important for us to practice.
Yeah. And, it doesn't cost that much to do, but it's such an important step. When you think about what the illustration you just described, I just want to, because it applies to whether you're an insurance company, a bank, another product manufacturer, a distribution company, you walk in the shoes. And so if you're just looking at the feedback, you might miss some of this, right? The feedback could say, I'm just going to throw out an example. You tell me if I'm off course. The feedback might say, number one, not a great score. So you're looking at the numbers, the quantitative metrics, which is important, but by itself in a vacuum does not tell you the story. And even looking at the verbatims or the comments that you see, you might see, well, the cord breaks, or the computer stopped working, or the edges are frayed, and you could miss what the root cause of the issue is, right?
That's right. So I think, of course, feedback is important, like you said, and numbers are indicative. Sometimes we do have the comments or the opportunity to go back and probably probe a little bit with the customer as to what his cost is, right? But also having the opportunity to use a product or actually walk through a support journey and then be able to experience firsthand for yourself, right, as to what could have been the reasons that a customer has feels the way or has given us a particular score or think that gives you a wealth of information that you can then work on, right? And it also helps you to make those intentional changes that you want to make in order to be able to deliver those exceptional experiences that you want to ultimately deliver.
Well, thank you, Jay. I want to ask you one more question before we go to a short break, and that is about CX as a brand differentiator. When you think about brands in the world in categories, CX is just a leader. HP is a leader in its category and has been a dominant leader. I remember when other printer cartridge and printer and toner cartridges and so forth, they still very much exist. And they're very profitable. But HP differentiated itself as a brand, and it wasn't just on the product. And I guess my question for you is, when you think about CX as a brand differentiator, what's your personal view, and how do you think, from what your experience of being inside the HP culture, how does HP think about CX being a brand differentiator?
Great question, Mark. And I think it's a lot of people are aware of the culture that we have in HP. And I think that's something that always stands out and something a lot of people talk about, right? And one of the things that's part of our culture and is that we strongly believe that we focus on the customer first, right? And that is something that is clearly spelled out as part of our a cultural aspect. And we encourage, no matter where you are, you could be in a customer facing role or in a role that does not have anything to do with your end, like the end HP customer, right? But the culture that we are trying to build, or that has been built, is that no matter where you are, all of us have the power to make a difference for our customers in whatever way it is, right? And you will see it right from the top to the person who's actually on the ground doing work. Everybody understands that they play a very powerful role. And as a company, when you see everybody not just talking about it, but actually living that culture for the many years that we've been living now, and it kind of like becomes a habit for each person, and therefore, and habits and how we behave finally forms the overall culture, right? So that's one thing about HP, right? I mean, we always keep our customers at the center of everything that we do.
Well, we're right on, and thank you for sharing that. We're going to go to a short break. When we come back, I didn't mention Jaya is one of the board members of the Customer Experience Professionals Association, and in order to have been selected, usually you have to go through some bumps and bruises and have some experience along the way. And she's going to share both her mountaintop moments and some of the potholes and landmines that she has experienced. And also we're going to talk a little bit about digital transformation and how important digital is to the experience right after this break. You are listening to the Delighted Customers podcast. I'm Mark Slayton, your host, and if you're just starting out on your CX journey and need help with a CX strategy, I know it can be tough. Maybe you've been on your journey and just need help getting to the next level. I've walked the walk as a CX practitioner, and I know the real-world challenges you're facing. I'd love to come alongside you and put our heads together and jointly define the problem that needs solving. Let's have a live conversation. You can reach me at empoweredcx.com. Okay, we are back with Jaya Sudarshan from HP, all the way from India. And we've been talking about all sorts of things and why CX is a brand differentiator, and CX and in HP and HP in India. And now we're going to talk a little bit about your journey as a practitioner, Jaya. So one of the things we ask about is mountaintop moments. And as you consider your career as a CX professional, what's your greatest success story? What's something you can look back on and say, yeah, I'm proud of that?
Well, I think I'm going to, okay, so early in my profession, like when I just started being a CX professional, right? I was very passionate about what I was doing. And in my mind, it was very simple as to why CX is important, right? And
Mm-hmm.
early on, I did, I was when I started, right, I was little not so excited when I see that people around me, especially people who I needed to influence, right, in order to drive some of these projects, were not sharing the same excitement and enthusiasm that I was, because for some reason I was not talking in their language. And I think that was, it took me a while to understand and come to that realization that, oh, yes, I am very excited about CX. For me, it's very clear. But then how do I bring the other people into the same light, right? So
Right.
then I slowly started learning in terms of how do I talk about CX with what's in it for them in mind, right? How do I make it their story? Hey, what am I enabling? How am I making you successful by this particular CX activity or a customer experience related activity that I'm doing, right? And then I slowly started to see the difference in the way people would react to me. People would be willing to try out some of the things that we were doing. And at some point, I realized, right, not just CX and maybe whatever profession you are in. End of the day, it's all about influencing people, right? It's all about helping them navigate the change, right? And how successfully you do it. And I think that realization, and therefore how I was able to learn and grow from there over the past many years, kind of made it easy for me later on, right, to talk about what would be the ROI. Hey, how would it help you? So I think that was one realization early on that kind of like helped. So when I finally learned uh, how to do that magic of bringing people together, and that was one that is kind of like a good learning moment for me, but I felt like, okay, right now is when I'm successfully able to really push through some CX related changes, maybe within a small team or within even an organization. And some of the things that we work on from a CX, as a CX professional, you will see we mostly in our organization are people who bring different departments together in order to go address some of the challenges our customers are facing, or improve something for a customer. So we call them the linchpins, where they kind of really bring the might of the organization together to make something happen for your customer. So the time that I realized that, and a few places where I was able to really bring do that in order to make a difference for a partner or a customer, have been the mountaintops, I would say. But it's always been a learning experience.
Mm. So the linchpin. So, like, if I were a CX practitioner, and I love that word, linchpins, how might I begin to look for those?
Well, see, for example, right, I mean, it could be something that your customer is not happy about, and more often than not, right, when you even draft a customer journey or you put a customer journey map together, you will notice that each team is focused on that portion of that journey which they are responsible for. And in most of the places where we've had challenges, the only step or the big step for us is to bring the different teams, right? If they could be like 5 teams or sometimes even 10 teams who handle a customer journey, from start to the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's all about stepping back and giving them the view of, hey, this is what you do, but this is a portion of this entire journey, right? So breaking down those silos and being, when I call the linchpin, being that central point that brings all these different people together to see how each of them plays an important role and how they can even create better synergies if they come together, right? And it's sometimes as simple as, hey, oh, so your team does this, your activity comes after me. So if I give this additional information, I'm making it easier for you. I'm giving you more customer focus, right? So similarly, when the first step is just bringing them together, and I've seen most often, they address the challenges by themselves, right? So and that's what I mean by linchpins, right? Because uh, whatever is it that you're trying to solve or create for the customer, it's not going to be one team that is going to be help you achieve that. As a CX practitioner, what I've learned over the many years that I've been practicing CX is it always involves really bringing many departments and teams and individuals together in order to truly achieve something for the customer. So it's very interesting, right? For the customer, you are the customer's voice within the organization. And within the organization, you are what binds these different teams together to make things happen for your customer. So I think we play a very, very unique role. And that's kind of what excites me, because you get to meet with so many people, you get to understand okay. And the other thing is you really get to understand how the entire ecosystem works, because you need to understand that, right? You need to understand why marketing is doing something the way it is doing. You need to understand supply chain and what are the kind of issues they would be having. For example, if you're related to something related to spare parts, right? Or you would have to understand pricing, whatever it is, right? It's about how do you understand the entire ecosystem? Because if you don't do that, you're not going to be able to, or how your tools work, right? And if there's so to understand those systemic issues, right, or specific customer issues. So I think for a CX professional, it's also important to really have a good understanding of all the what happens in the company. So you need to know a little bit of everything, right? And then also have the kind of relationship and networking to bring the right people together to make things happen for your customer. That's like been my biggest learning. And I think that's what excites me, because each challenge requires different people, different kind of, solutioning, and gives you a great opportunity to network and grow personally as well.
Jaya, what you said is so interesting, because I think the CX leaders are people who have that full view of the ecosystem, that there really is no other department in the organization that does that. I mean, you could argue marketing or HR, not quite the same way, right? That we do.
True.
Yeah.
That is so true. Yeah.
So you mentioned a mountaintop moment. I think that rings true for a lot of people who are CX practitioners, is that moment when you are the human duct tape and you bring it all together and you shed light and you give people a chance to see from all these different perspectives the whole story from the customer's lens.
Yep.
So now, what about the potholes? Are there any lessons learned?
Many. Oh, many. And I think unless and I believe, and I think, again, I've worked with HB my entire career, and most of my personal values to a large extent match my HP values as well. So one of the things that we've always believed in is, do things quickly, fail if you have to, but then learn and change. And that's kind of been something, that's personally I've kind of followed as well, right? So there have been multiple times, something's not moved forward. It could be a project or a difficult person or individual that I am not able to get an alignment with, right? And I think when I look back at some of these landmines or moments where I felt like, okay, I didn't know how to get out of these, or it took me a while and there was a opportunity to learn. When I look back at them today, I realized that it's probably because I had not thought through in terms of how do I, similar, like I said, right, how do I understand things from that person's lens, right? It's all about, most often we are at loggerheads with people is because we have different views coming together, right? And I, like I said, that was a learning that I had early on as well, right? how do I really talk the different languages so that people understand what it is that I'm trying, what I'm trying to do. And also the other thing that I learned somewhere along the way is how do I not make it about me?
Mm.
And as a young professional out there wanting to prove something, uh, uh, and being the passionate, person. So it's always um, a challenge, right? Especially when you're working with big teams, when you're working with so many different people who come from so many different backgrounds and have each one has a different a goal or an objective, right? How do you get them to see what you're trying to show them, right? Or why would this particular thing that I'm asking you to do be good for you, right? But I've also had these lovely experiences where I've been part of a team where I've seen the team literally merge and grow. And and for me, who has been a single, or started off as a single player, and to have to experience that teamwork and realize and have a team which actually kind of like rises to fill in those gaps that we individually have, so that as collectively we're able to take it to a different level. I think that was, for me, that experience really changed the way I looked at how I worked. And it doesn't happen every time, but when it does, it's very magical. And once you've experienced it, at least for me, I'm constantly looking for opportunities again to come to create that magic, right?
Hmm.
Because when you truly find the right team with everybody who believes in that achieving that goal, and the synergies that you create, I think really gives you a different kind of a, I would say it's a high,
Hmm.
but yeah, it gives you a different thing, and you want to keep trying to keep recreating again for yourself, right? So I think many potholes, but this has been my biggest learning as I, navigated them over the past few years.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So important to learn from, where we over time. I mean, it's just what happens. We all step in potholes, and I think the illustration you shared about initially not locking heads, but really trying to think through, hey, what's it like from their lens? What are some ways we can talk their language and come at this from the same side of the table?
Yep.
Yeah. So breakthroughs. I'd love to talk about some in this area. We talk about some areas that maybe CX breakthroughs, and in particular, one area that we've been seeing for a while, but digital transformation is something that is impacting the customer experience. And I wanted to ask, there's some tension sometimes between the way the digital transformation is being done and human interactions, right? So how does that manifest itself maybe at your work, and what strategies would you recommend to people?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? So, actually, coming from an analytics and a data background, right, I'm always fascinated at how we can use a lot of data and make sense out of them and draw insights from them. So, for me, it helped that I had that little background and I understood how some of the, because in the end of the day, digitalization is all about data, right? And how are we empowering or making things easy for our customers. Now, as much as, and I think digitalization is important, right? What it helps us to do is firstly, simplify most of our processes or journeys for our customers. It also, in most cases, when we talk about AI or ML or RPA, they look at taking a lot of data that is available and really drawing insights, which then enable us to take away some what we call the monotonous routine things that people do, or help them make better decisions, right? And if you see with COVID, our digital transformation has accelerated at a much higher speed than we would expect it to be. However, as much as digitalization enables us to make it really a frictionless, effortless experience for our customers. Um, Somewhere along the way, I think it's very important for us to maintain that human touch as well, right? Because I know I get very frustrated with chatbots these days. I know they mean well, but I still, in an era where everything is digitalized, I still want to have that little human interaction that I want to have, right? But the challenge that we have is, as much as a lot of companies are investing in digital transformation, but in terms of what we want, or what do we really want to achieve, is that not lose that empathy, right? We'll never be able to create that or recreate that empathy with the digital, however great your AI is, or however well you're training your RPA, that's not going to be recreatable, right? So empathy, again, I think is a focus area where of course, we use all the digitalization to enable us to make those decisions, but how do we make it empathetic, right, and balance it? Now, as a person, when I'm interacting with you, Mark, I mean, I look at your body language, I look at how you nod your head, and it's easy for me as a person, as an individual, to be empathetic and understand a little about you and know how to respond, right? But I think the biggest challenge that we have as organization is, how do we scale this empathy? How do I make my entire, maybe frontline, empathetic? How do we get called an empathetic team, or maybe even the entire organization be perceived as empathetic, right? It's not easy, because it's difficult. It's not easy to scale it up, right? Because you need to have that instant understanding and reading of your tone, your voice, a lot of small cues that I get from your body language for me to be empathetic towards you and say something that would make you feel good and part of the conversation, right? But how do we make that, scale it up? I think that's a challenge that we have. And the interesting thing is, this is where digitalization can help you as well, right? Because it can give you, based on so many different data points that we would probably have or have access to, how can that be, packaged or processed in such a way that it is provided to those people who actually interact with customers, or people who make decisions, to empower them to make, to say the right things, to treat our customers empathetically. So I think we need the digitalization and all the great work that's happening here. But I think at some point, it is very important for us to, ensure that human touch is not lost. Because, like I said, people might forget everything, but they will never make you forget they will never forget how you made them feel, right? And I don't think without the human touch, we'll be able to create that particular sense of feeling and experience for our customers. So I think it's very important for us to balance, digital transformation journeys alongside human, interactions. Yeah. So that's.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is there's a synergy that can happen between digital transformation and human interactions when you think about the design and the use of a product and customer experience. I heard someone once say that we don't want to have a technology in search of a strategy.
Yes.
Right. And so that's what I hear you saying is let's not lose the human part of whatever we're designing. Let's really start right from the human part.
Correct.
I agree. And if we could pull up a little bit, we were talking about digital transformation and how it gets used. And I think there are some things that really drive people nuts when it comes to digital, the way digital applications are. And I think ultimately, and tell me if you agree with this, that we're talking about the omni-channel experience. A lot of people think when we say omni-channel, first, some people don't know what that means. It really means when a customer interacts with your brand, your company, they have a multitude of different ways, whether you think about it or not, or whether you've planned for it or not. They can call on the phone, they could speak to somebody in person, they could go to your website or their phone, and they can interact with your website, or they can interact with an online experience. They can call a call center. There's a number of different ways they can interact. And omnichannel really doesn't mean just that they have these multiple choices. What it means is they really get to choose which channel they want to use when they want to use it. Does that make sense? And is that, since you're very close to that at HP, is that something that gets in your radar?
Yes. So omni-channel experience, some of the things that we intentionally try to design is no matter where you reach us through, we are striving to provide the same kind of experience, right? You might be reaching us, like you said, through a phone or through a chat, or you could just be walking into one of our service centers or whatever it is, right? So no matter where you're approaching us and what your journey is from there on, we want to have that consistency in the journey. Now, digital transformation, yes, digitalization is also happening in a customer facing, like you said. It could be like deployment of chat, or which does not involve actual people, behind, on the chat with you. But there's a lot that happens in the back end or within your organization that's not visible to your customers. For example, right? How do you know where you are in a particular journey, or what next? Or how do we know that when you call in, right, it could be like a natural language processing, right? Based on what you say, how do I assess what your mood is or how you're feeling right now, right? That's part of our digitalization as well. Now, when you call in, how do I know if you've called before, right? And what is the experience that you had priorly, right? And how do I know end to end, at least for us from a support perspective, right? How do I know end to end how I'm going to be able to service you? And how do I have that visibility internally? And how do I provide that visibility to you externally, right? And that's where digitalization kind of helps, where right now everything is available to you at the tap of a button.
Well, I think that ties back a couple of things in what you just said. One is that ties back to earlier you said a big part of our job is influencing, helping others to navigate the change. And I think about Stephen Covey, who talked about the 7 habits of highly effective people. And he talked about first seek to understand, then to be understood. So the humility you bring to the table at Hewlett Packard, which is to say, I really need to learn more about other departments and how they function. And so when you get to the point of the language, speaking their language, you're better equipped to do that if you've spent time learning about them.
Absolutely. And if we are not, it's just about, being vertical and horizontal, right? As much as, you sharpen your specific CX skills, unless you have that horizontal knowledge of how things work, you need to have both the expertise to bring things together. So I think that's one thing that I've learned. And I've seen people who I've worked with who have mentored me, and I kind of look at what made them successful. And this is something, that it boils down to with them as well. So I see that they really know what they're talking about. They understand how the different departments and stakeholders are impacted by what they're doing, and they're able to really, be able to convince them that we are doing this probably for the greater good, and why, every one of us, it's like a win-win for everybody. Yeah.
Well, excellent. Jaya, I just want to thank you so much. We talked about so many great things, so many gems in here. I just so appreciate you joining the show. Is there any way, if one of our listeners would like to reach you, what would be the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Well, I can leave my email address, and that would be a good way for people to reach out to me, and be happy to talk or interact and be available for that. And Mark, thank you so much for having me here. Some of the questions really made me introspect, think back. And it's always nice to go back and think about your journey and think for those defining moments, and also think about at the crux of it, what is it that you're really trying to do? And always good to be reminded that you're in a job that you're very, very happy in, right? A job that makes you get up in the morning and go into office and just be very passionate about what you're doing. So I really want to thank you for the opportunity as well.
Oh, my pleasure. It's so great to have you as a guest, and so much wisdom and knowledge coming from you. Thank you, Jaya.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Well, thanks for listening to the Delighted Customers podcast. I want to ask you to do two things. If you've enjoyed this episode or any of my other ones, hit subscribe. I've got a lot of other great guests that are coming up and a lot of other great content, and I don't want you to miss anything. And if you've gotten something out of this, share it with someone. Make sure they have access to all this content and all the other great content coming up. You can find any links or references on the show in the show notes, and you can find those on my website at empoweredcx.com.